Good morning. It is great to be here among all of you and to see all your faces this morning. I'd like to start the message with a reading from a book entitled The Cure for Sorrow by Jan Richardson. And this is a blessing for the brokenhearted. Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal this wound, when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own stubborn and persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless. So I have to tell you, from my perspective, I had a great message prepared for today. I was going to take a close look at the Beatitudes, which are part of the Sermon on the Mount, and what it says to us today. But Tuesday's massacre at Uvalde Elementary School in Texas had me come up short. I just couldn't have levity and what I was saying in the message. It was just not the time for it. I felt like you, probably, like I had been sucker punched yet again by a global crisis that had local impact. And I say global because I think the whole world absorbed that shock, not just of Uvalde, but of Buffalo. And it's local because it hit me square in the chest, and it went right to my heart. And it still feels that way. You see, Tracy and I have a grandson who turns 10 tomorrow. He's a 4th grader. And he plays baseball and soccer and basketball. He has this tender bunny heart that just engulfs his family and his friends. And he torments his sister almost as much as he loves her. And he looks after her. I absolutely could not fathom losing our grandson in such a heinous way. The same way I just could absolutely not fathom anyone losing a loved one to such senseless violence. Violence that could have and should have been prevented. Or at the very least, so long delayed by hurdles and obstacles that the heat of the moment preceding it has cooled. We have a teachable moment at hand yet again. And while my message from the Sermon on the Mount in its entirety will have to wait, it still begs a question. So I want to reach back into it and go back to the Sermon on the Mount, which is in the book of Matthew, that version. And it's ascribed to Jesus, and it supposedly takes place just as his ministry was beginning. He had chosen his disciples, his apostles, and hadn't even given them their job description yet when he gave this message. Contained within the 3 chapters that are the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew is the passages known as the Beatitudes. They go something like this. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And Jesus goes on to say, you are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. People do not light a lamp and put it under a bushel basket. Rather, they put it on the lampstand, and it gives light to the whole house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to God in heaven. So as you'll hear in June, because I'm not going to scrap my message, really, Jesus wasn't blessing a group of powerful, privileged, comfortable people. He was talking to an audience that was likely filled with those who were leading desperate and despairing lives. And yet, in the midst of despair, in the midst of persecution and hunger, in the midst of evil, Jesus was standing there giving them God's blessing. They're blessed in their grief. Their pain and their sorrow is recognized by this Rabbi Yeshua. And in all of that, they are reassured that God is with them. Jesus doesn't offer a magic wand that's going to give them everything they desire or fix everything that's broken. Nor does he issue a judgment of what's wrong with them that they're in this situation. He confers God's power and God's comfort through the blessing of God upon a powerless and aching crowd. The author of this morning's reading, Jan Richardson, unexpectedly lost her husband and creative partner in 2013. Being a Methodist minister and an artist and an author, she responded in the best way she knew how. She wrote blessings that eventually became her book entitled The Cure for Sorrow. Paraphrasing her website, Jan didn't try to sugarcoat the blessings she wrote, as you could hear from this morning's blessing for the brokenhearted. She didn't minimize the pain and the bewilderment and the anger that came in the wake of a wrenching death. With these blessings, Jan entered instead into the depths of the shock and the rage and the sorrow. From those depths, she wrote heartbreaking honesty, offering surprising comfort and stunning grace. Eventually, she came to know the tenacity of hope and to recognize the presence of love that is, as she writes, sorrow's lasting cure. The tenacity of hope and the presence of love. That's what the people in front of Jesus needed most. They needed the tenacity of hope and the presence of love in the face of pain and grief. And maybe it was just the mere act of naming what they were going through. I see you. That was healing and comforting. Jesus was offering that individually and to them as a community, because in community, our grief helps us see our shared fragility and our mutual resilience when we meet each other in sometimes unspeakable pain. So after Jesus blesses the crowd in front of him, he also demands responsibility from those who are blessed. In living their light, they have behaviors and attitudes to uphold. And being the salt of the earth, they're expected to act like it. We have to ask ourselves, as Quakers and as elders and as people of the light and salt of the earth, what is the blessing we can hold on to at a time like this? What is the rock that you cling to that holds you in tumultuous times? And what is our responsibility, having done that, as we seek to rightly and fully live our light? While we consider the blessings we've received and the responsibilities we have in shining our light before others, we also have to find solace wherever we can. Several times this week, I had to just stop and center down. I felt compelled to, and I thought, no, I can't not sit in the quiet before I can put one foot in front of the other. And I wasn't centering down into expectant waiting, looking for a reason or why or what to do. I was just there leaning into the comfort of the inner teacher. There I found enough solace to feel a bit more grounded and a little bit less hyper-responsive. We still had to turn off the news a couple of times through the week, but it helped. So I found myself wondering, what is it that you instinctively know to do when you're ungrounded or grieving? I remember the story, I think it was from Westtown High School, the Quaker school, where, I don't know if y'all know, Scott Pierce Coleman taught. Their beloved science teacher and math teacher, the kids had pushed them together over the years to the point they finally fell in love and got married. And they were their favorite teachers. They got married, the whole school was at the wedding. And on their way back from their honeymoon, they were killed in an auto accident. These kids, high school Quaker students, called a special meeting for worship and sat in worship for over 3 hours to be able to ground themselves and to center themselves in their grief in community. We've explored a number of ways. If you don't have something you instinctively go to, we've talked about breath work and meta blessing and even the weird thing called Ho'oponopono. We've talked a lot about ways people around the world connect with their inner guidance. What fills your spirit up when you need solace? We can't drink from an empty well, and neither can you pour a drink for others from your empty well. And action that comes out of anger or hate is not action that is compassionate. So connecting with our inner source, our inner light, helps us stay in compassion. And like Carolyn said earlier, act out of love. As we feel the local impact of a seemingly endless stream of global tragedies, it's really imperative that we replenish our own spirits before we put our lights on the lampstand. I'd like to leave you with another of Jan Richardson's poems. And this one, I think, sums it up. It's called Solace Blessing. That's it. That's all this blessing knows to do. Shine your shoes. Fill your refrigerator. Water your plants. Make some soup. All the things you cannot think to do yourself when the world has come apart, when nothing will be normal again. Somehow a blessing knows precisely what you need, even before you know. It sees what will bring the deepest solace for you. It senses what will offer the kindest grace. And so it will step with such quietness into the ordinary moments where the absence is the deepest. It will enter with such tenderness into the hours where the sorrow is most keen. Just leave it open, your door, your heart, your day, in every aching moment it holds. See what solace spills through the gaps your sorrow has torn. See what comfort comes to visit, holding out its gifts in each compassionate hand. See what solace spills through the gaps your sorrow has torn, keeping your heart, your door, and your day open. And may it be so for each of you. Amen.